razor blade. I was gonna call it a spatula. And you kind of just go like this. You really don't need to spend a lot of money on good quality art supplies to get some really good stuff, which is why I use paints like these. So let's start at the basics and let's start with paint. I have everything kind of laid out in front of me over here. I use a bunch of these Liquitex basic acrylic paints. I have a whole bunch of them. I have like maybe 10 to 15 little tubes of them. And these are very affordable paints that are really good quality. And I will include swatches as well in this area right here so that you guys can kind of get a feel for what the texture's like and if it's something that you would actually be interested in. I have a whole bunch of colors, and I especially have the primary colors because you can just go ahead and mix these up and make a whole bunch of other colors. I also bought this set of 10 golden acrylic fluid paints, and I really like golden acrylics paint just in general. So this was like a really good find, and I got it for I think about $30. Once again, it'll be right here. I really like the quality of these. I know that the tubes are really small. It's like 1 ounce, really tiny compared to this one, which is 60 ounces. A little bit does go a long way with a lot of these paints. A lot of them are very opaque, so you don't really need like a whole bunch. So this white, for example, and this white are completely different. This is very fluid and very light, and this one is very thick. So the reason that I have this big tube of titanium white golden acrylic paint is because I like to mix it with cheaper paints, and it changes the texture and the consistency of the cheaper paints into something that's really nice and something that's more on the high end almost. I also do oil paintings, and I use the Winston & Newton oil colors. These are absolutely my favorite. These are super good quality, and they are kind of expensive, but just the quality of them is really worth it. I have some bigger tubes and I have some smaller tubes. The bigger tubes are obviously colors that I use more often, and then the smaller tubes are colors that I don't really use as often. Like for example, I don't really use Alzarian Crimson very often. Also, just a quick tip is don't roll up your oil paint containers like this. I had to learn this the hard way. I make sure to squeeze from the bottom now like this, just like lightly squeeze it to get the paint to come out. I was rolling it up like a tube of toothpaste, and it like broke these little sides. All over here are like big cracks of where the paint just kind of came out. That's just a tip, just in case you're washing this and you have these like metal containers for your paint. Don't roll it up because it's going to make the paint dry out and the tube break all along the edges. I also have a bunch of these really tiny watercolor paints, and I just got these in like a set. I don't really use them. I've used them like one time, but these are just some paints that I have. They're not very opaque. They're very translucent. I don't really use them very often. Now onto brushes. This is a 3-inch painter's brush that I have, and I use this for varnishing and gessoing my boards. I also have a bunch of these containers for my water. I get these from takeout places, so if I get any like food delivery, I like save these little containers. This is from like a faux place, so unfortunately I have to order faux, eat it just to get these containers, so it's a real struggle. I have a bunch of different types of brushes. This is a brush that I really like to varnish with as well for my, I don't know, it kind of depends on the mood that I'm in, whether I'm gonna varnish with my big brush or this like really tiny brush. It really depends on like the size of my canvas and just kind of the mood I'm in, you know. I also bought these really tiny brushes because I kept on painting pieces that had really small details, and I try to use like the tip of a brush, and I was just like, why not buy like really small detailed brushes? The one thing I wish that these brushes had was like more stiffness to them, so I could like really get really tiny thin lines. But for that I use, drum roll, I use these paint pens. Now these paint pens are not the best. They're not the best, but they are nice because how thin they are. So this is what they look like. It's like a little pen, and then you open it and it's like a really fine tip. It's not a brush tip, it's like a hard plastic tip. You just like shake it and then you get the paint to come out. I have a box of these in black, and then I also have a box of these in white. I can't find the white one right now, but I have so much stuff in front of me, so I'm trying to like sort through everything, make sure I don't forget. This is where I keep the rest of my random brushes and then random stuff. So these really tall brushes are for oil painting. I just have like a bunch of random stuff in here. I have a razor blade to like scrape my glass canvas, which I'll show you later. I have some whiteboard markers in here, and I also have a couple of these Exacto blades. These blades are a lifesaver. I use these every single painting I get. I use them. I like do different designs. So I like lay down my tape, cut shapes, and then I paint over to get like really clean lines. I use this to just like, I use this for everything. I use random little things that I can't think of now, but I do use these a lot. And this one has like a squared off tip on it. I have a bunch of different little tips. Get yourself an Exacto blade, but be careful, because if you're like me, you're also gonna need to buy a box of Band-Aids. I also have these, oh my gosh. Don't do what I do and don't leave wet oil paint on your blades, because then it's gonna be almost impossible to open these. I use these blades to scrape my glass canvas. It comes with a box of placements. Super useful to scrape off that dried oil paint. It makes your life so much easier. So if you oil paint a lot, first of all, get yourself a glass canvas. Second of all, get one of these. I'll try to find this exact one and put over here. If not, I'll put a similar one. My glass canvas, it is dirty. It is self-made. So this is basically a piece of glass that I put on a piece of foam, and then I duct taped it down. I taped it down with duct tape on the side, and I put saran wrap over the paint to keep it moist, but this is really old paint. So let me actually show you what I mean. You take your little razor blade, I was gonna call it a spatula, and you kind of just go like this. Super easy, very satisfying. Maybe I'll insert a little clip of me cleaning this board. Glass canvas is amazing. See how all that paint just kind of came off? I'll deal with that later. So let's just close that back up. Pretend like nothing happened. Saran wrap, I just bought this at Costco. Good for covering your paint so that they don't dry. You can use this both on acrylic and oil. Headphones are so useful for me when I am painting. These are, I think, like Beats. I got these as a gift from my fiance. They are awesome, and sometimes I like to paint when it's like completely quiet, and then I sometimes like to paint when I have some like really good vibes in my ears. Currently, I'm obsessed with a song called Oxygen by Masego, so please check that out. I also have this compass that I don't really use super often. I accidentally broke it. Transfer paper is something that I use on all my commissions as well. Basically paper that has graphite on the bottom of it, and it helps you to print out a design, and then you take a pen and then you press on it, and it transfers this graphite that's on the bottom, it transfers it to your board. I got a pack of 30. So this is a foam board that I have. It's the same foam that came off of this canvas, and I use this for many different things. For example, if I'm trying to get like a really small design cut out from a piece of tape, I take the piece of tape like this, and then I put it down here. I take my Exacto blade, and then I cut out a design, and because it's on a foam board, I can actually press my Exacto blade into this, and it's not going out on the other side, so it's safer for me. Take the tape off, and now I have this stencil that I can use, so I can put it on my canvas board, stick it on, and then I'll paint on top of it to get that perfect shape. Something else that I use a lot on my commission is sandpaper. I have 2 medium, 2 fine, and 1 very fine. And I use this to sand down my boards, and then I put gesso on it, and then I sand it. And this just helps give it like a very flat surface to work. I also bought this color wheel, which I've never used. See, I told you this was useful. You never know when you need to use a color wheel. Next up, something that I use a lot are rulers. Now this is a 18-inch cork bottom ruler that I like to use when I'm trying to measure things out, or if I'm trying to get like a really straight edge. Next up is a sketch pad that has canvas paper in it, which I never even knew was a thing. First of all. Second of all, this is for oil and acrylic paints, which is what I do. And this is like really nice. I take this and then I use these clamps that I have, and I clamp it to my easel. And this is just like thick canvas paper. It feels like a stretch canvas board. Next up is my sketch pad. This is 9 by 12. I have like little practice things on here. I also have tracing paper. Tracing paper is a great way to practice certain styles of art. If you're still trying to find your style, this is like a good way to practice that. It's a good way to practice anatomy. So next up are things that I use on every painting as well, which is liquid gesso, satin varnish, acrylic gloss, which is a medium and a varnish, which means that I can mix this into my paints to kind of make them more glossy, and also it kind of takes a little bit longer for them to dry, so it's not drying as fast as it normally would. And then for my oil paints, I use linseed oil and then turpentine. This is odorless turpentine. This is a paint thinner for oil paints because oil paints are very thick. I also use little jars like this to keep certain colors of paint in that I really like. This is a okay, easy. This is like a baby grayish blue color that I really like. Oh, and I also found those white paint pens that I was talking about earlier. And these are also charcoal sketching pencils. These come unsharpened. They just come like this. And I use the razor blade to like this, sharpen it up. And I use these in my sketch pad all the time. Now, the next most important thing that I use is tape. Tape is something that I use on every single painting that I use. This is duct tape, this is frog tape, and this is just 3M painter's tape. And I use this to create shape, or I either lay it down and then I cut out just kind of like I showed you with the Exacto blade. Next step is I have these Pigma Micron pens. I don't really use these very often, but I like to use the smallest ones to kind of do like my little line work. So the next thing is the Stay Wet palette. This is something that I use every single time I paint. This is a palette that has a brush, not a brush, it has a sponge on the bottom of it. It has a sponge down there that you kind of wet and then you squeeze the water out and then put some palette paper on top of it, and it keeps your paints wet. So as you can see, this is paint that I used like 4 days ago. This is acrylic paint, which is known to dry really fast. It's still all wet. And I really like to use this. This actually saves you a lot of money because you're not wasting money on all that dried paint. It comes with like 5 of these little palette papers, and you literally just take them to the sink and then you wash them, and then you like squeeze out the water, and then you just put it on top of your little sponge, and then you can just put the paints on top of here. It's just like extremely convenient. This is the palette that I would use before. I didn't really like this because the paints would dry on it super fast. So then I looked into getting something where it was kind of like an airtight container, and that's how I found this one. So I never really use this one anymore. Also, I bought this little container, which is also airtight. It doesn't have a sponge though, but you put your paints in here and then you cover it up and then you seal it, and it has like a little stand so that it can kind of like stand up when you're painting. But I have not tried to use this yet because just looking at it, it looks like this is going to be really annoying to clean out. I also use the iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil to sketch my ideas out on Procreate, and then I print them out if I'm doing a commission, for example, or just to kind of practice on here. This is the 1 terabyte 3rd generation 12.9 inch iPad Pro. This is very useful. I use this all the time. This is something really important that I use every single time I paint. This is for my filming. So basically it screws on to your table like this. You can't really see, and then it moves around. It's actually really stiff and really nice, and I use this on all my time lapses and my painting videos that I recorded. I also have this to keep my hair up when I'm painting. I also have erasers. I have white pearl erasers. And last but not least, this is something that I use every day. This is one of the most important things that I use. I would say that without this, I wouldn't be able to make any of my own. These are very important, and I highly recommend that you look into getting some. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate that, and it will really help me out. I'm always adding to my collection of art supplies, so if you guys have anything that you want me to try out, leave it below in the comments and I'll try it out, and maybe I'll make a video on it as well. I am Tasha the Crescent Moon Artist, and thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.